Welcome to Lunch with Leaders, the podcast where we explore what it takes to lead, thrive, and create lasting impact. I'm Adesileju Dogalanya, a TEDx speaker, leadership strategist, and the founder of African Women in STEM. Each episode features insightful conversations with innovators, trailblazers, and leaders from around the world who are transforming cultures, redefining leadership, and shaping the future of work. Together, we'll share the stories, strategies, and mindsets that will empower women in STEM to amplify their visibility, influence, and impact. So if you're ready to lead boldly, amplify your voice, and help influence what leadership looks like for women in STEM, hit follow, share this podcast, and join us every week for impactful conversations, powerful stories, and practical strategies.
I wouldn't say it's cutthroat, but you really have to have some tough skin to get into the game. It's going to be a lot of people that's going to say no starting out. But just because it's rejection doesn't mean it's over. Sometimes rejection is protection.
Hello and welcome again. Our guest today is Dr. Mia Edgerton-Fulton. Dr. Mia is a biomedical scientist, an educator, and an entrepreneur. She's working in the intersection of science, innovation, and education. She holds a PhD in biomedical sciences and brings expertise in neuroscience, translational research, and science communication with a focus on turning complex research into practical real-world impact. As a biology instructor and mentor, Dr. Mia is known for creating engaging, student-centered learning experiences that prepare the next generation of STEM leaders. She's also the founder of NeuroPlex, a biotech venture developing sustainable plant-derived solutions for chronic brain diseases, and the founder of Scholarly Scouts, an initiative designed to empower students through mentorship, academic growth, and innovation-driven support. So through her work across research, teaching, and entrepreneurship, she helps bridge the gap between science and accessibility, equipping people and communities to think critically, lead boldly, and create meaningful change. Welcome to the show, Dr. Mia.
I appreciate you inviting me, and I'm very happy to be here and share my experiences today.
Oh, I know. I'm excited. I can't wait to get into the questions. So let's go. Let's get started. This is kind of like taking me back because I was on your podcast not too long ago.
I know, right?
Time flies. Like I mentioned in your bio, you do operate at the intersection of science, education, and entrepreneurship. And in my mind, I'm thinking, how is she doing all this stuff? I know for a lot of people, most of my audience are women in STEM, and there's some people that might be listening that have this idea of what a scientist is, someone that's in the lab, very focused on the lab things. So how do you figure out a way to extend your work beyond just being a scientist to being an entrepreneur, teaching, helping, educate other people? Please let us know, like, how are you doing all this?
Well, I will say that there are different stages, I would say, to this career path. It's not always linear. And I think finding my way through, I began as being a scientist who did the research and focused mainly on building my research skills and things of that nature. But as I was going along through my journey, I started realizing that I want to think of something outside of just doing that all the time. I really had to dig deep in myself and realize that it's somebody out here that came from a similar background. So I stumbled upon biomedical research in my junior year of college, but I came from a small town where access to research and those types of resources were not present. That is what really ignited my fire to want to be a mentor in that capacity, especially because I think mentorship is what really carried me a long way to get to the PhD program and complete, because it's not easy to complete it. During that time, I also really wanted to hone in on entrepreneurship. So I got a chance during my training to be a part of drug discovery and performing preclinical studies. That experience prepared me to be able to think about what impact do I want to make outside of just being in academia. With my experience of seeing those who are impacted by brain diseases and how things like diabetes and stroke, which are very prevalent in my hometown and within my community, that really made me want to say, okay, I think there's a change needs to be made, especially where people are trying to shift away from synthetic drugs and want to lean towards more natural medicinal pathways and products. And so I've been working very diligently and making deals behind the scenes to make this get up off the ground and happen. I stumbled my way into education as well. I grew up with my mom being an educator, and I always said, I was like, I don't see myself being an educator, but doing that, getting in the classroom and teaching students at the college level, it made me understand that, okay, this is where the real work happens, when you truly help shape the trajectory of students because they're at a point where they're finding themselves. So I think it's just all a full circle moment. And this is my way of wanting to give back to my community and to the world in my own unique way with these multiple ventures that I'm doing.
There's just so many things to pick from what you said, but when you talked about teaching, you said you never thought you would. I guess for a second I thought I would, and then I thought I'll probably say the equivalent of like fifth, sixth graders or something like that. One summer, and they just scarred me for life. And it was a really difficult subject. It was introductory technology, like the very so everybody's like, what is this? I don't know what you're talking about, but I have so much respect for you for teaching, for anybody that actually, and then you obviously have this passion for it because you're like, oh, I'm shaping these people, helping them find it. I'm like, okay, good. I'll help you find yourself. Didn't have certain opportunities or experiences growing up, but then when you had the chance to be exposed to them, I like that you actually took advantage. And not just that, you're going a step further to build something more for other people. It's interesting. I was having a conversation yesterday with someone about how do you just start a business? How do you start something? Start with what you do, which is like, okay, there's this need, there's this interest, and I think I want to do more. But a lot of people get to that point and then they stop and then they wait for the perfect time to get started. But I am glad you didn't wait for the perfect time to get started because there's so much that you're doing and so much that you're pouring into people right now that wouldn't have been possible if you were waiting for everything to be perfect. So most of my audience are women in STEM, and I'm going to say I did suffer from perfectionism, and a lot of us kind of want everything to be wonderful before we get started. But just one thing I want people to take away from this is there's a whole lot of stuff that you can do. I think just get started. Just get started.
I agree. And I'll be honest too, there are times like where, at least now since I've graduated, I think it's been a year since I had my defense. So I also value taking time away sometimes for it. During the process of being in grad school, I worked on really building my brand, and it was an outlet mainly for me. I feel like now it's about getting into the intricate details of building the business and learning how to raise capital. So lately I've been behind the scenes, but I felt like I was in a season where I had to pour back into myself in order to be able to get back in the game and give back to others. So especially with Scholarly Scouts, we really work with students one-on-one. I decided, I was like, okay, let's just push back until probably next fall and open another cohort just to give myself a chance to reset and also build more connections with nonprofits, get university partnerships, things of that nature where we can make an impact on a grander scale, and it kind of takes away some of the heavy lifting. I think with business, you learn a lot about what works and what doesn't work. Learning how to balance making it efficient for you, but still helping others, I think was something that I have been learning along the way, but it's been a great learning process. And I tell people to just don't feel bad if you just have to take a break sometimes from posting or anything like that, because we have to have our cup full before we can pour into others.
That is so true. But if you didn't start, what I'm hearing is, you've kind of built your brand and then you're taking a step back and going a little deeper. So people already you know who you are, and it's clear. So when you're having those conversations, when you're trying to raise money or do more work, it's very easy to have those conversations. And then the seasons too. But you had the first season, and this is your next season. There'll be so many other seasons in the process, and they're all going to look very different.
Ooh,
But I
yes,
just
they do.
they're all gonna look different, and it's okay. And it's okay as you're talking. I'm realizing certain things because when I got started, there was a lot of trial and error of like, first of all, getting out of my own way to try things. Because I remember, if you don't put things out there, you're never gonna know if it makes sense or not. Whatever is in your head is wonderful, but you need to know what other people are thinking, and you don't want to waste time. Because when I was like, having this long career, everything that I put out there has to be perfect, has to match. I mean, that was just ridiculous, that transition. I'm glad we're having this conversation, but it's kind of interesting that we're almost on the same trajectory of like, okay, we're doing this and then we're doing that. But I think I'm going to take your advice of kind of stepping back a little bit because there's just so much going on and there's a lot of more work behind the scenes that I have to do this year. So I'm excited about that.
You got this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Tying into what you said about you spent some time building your brand, being visible and communicating, I'm pretty sure right now that's serving you. But when it comes to brand building and visibility, it's not something that women in STEM or women in science feel very comfortable with. Can you just kind of talk a little bit more about that because it's absolutely necessary? So how can we kind of relay how essential this is for whatever it is that you're building, even if you're not building a business, but it's still very essential. But can you just kind of talk to that and how you were able to do it as well?
Sure. I say we live in a world where going viral and having all the likes and shares and all of those things matter a lot to people. But even right now, I'll be honest, I don't have 10,000 followers, but it's crazy that even people who aren't following you, they'll reach out and say, hey, I saw you on LinkedIn or whatever platform it may be. And they are intrigued by the things you have to say. So I think it's not all about how many people are liking it. Your ideas still matter. It's always great to just be genuine. Don't fake to be someone you're not. Really communicate what values that you think are going to make the world better. And sometimes everybody isn't going to give you 500 likes, and that's okay. Regardless, someone sees it and it resonates with someone. So the way I started was pretty much, I would say documenting, but talking about how my journey was during my PhD program. I would talk about the ins and outs, sometimes the good, bad, and the ugly, but not in a way to vent my frustration, but in a way to show that this helped turn into a transformation period for me. This happened. However, this is the takeaway I learned. And I hope that what I'm sharing, what I learned is going to help you, because you have no clue where people are in their life. And sometimes, even if they don't like it or do a reaction to it, it doesn't mean that somebody didn't need to hear that. So I took it as, this is the perfect time to allow people to get to know me. And sometimes people have to connect who you are as a person outside of just having the business. A lot of times people are attracted to how you communicate with your audience versus how viral you are or anything like that. People have to know you outside of just surface level things, I say. But it all depends on how people want to present themselves and brand themselves. But I say, don't be afraid to do it, even if it's not any likes on the post. Someone saw it and someone valued what you have to say. So that stuff can pay off later. as long as you're consistent, I think it'll pay off. So I'll say I have no regrets about just jumping in there and doing it. And, I create videos of me in the lab showing, man, I've been in here for 8 hours. My experiment failed, but you know what? I'm still pushing through. So I think those things are good. I use it as an outlet mostly to kind of get my mind off just focusing on science. I wanted to share my story so other people could be inspired by it and know that there's life outside of this and you can do anything you put your mind to. So I think it's all about the intention and what your goal is when it comes to branding and all of the social media stuff.
Yeah, and I just kind of like what you said because it's good to be true to yourself. Because if you're not, you can't sustain it. Because I remember when I started posting, I realized the habits of women in STEM, most professionals. During COVID, it was a little bit more free, but typically people don't just because they're trying to avoid being noticed by certain people and so on and so forth. But I post things and I'm like, is anybody even seeing this? But I used to host lives, but LinkedIn is kind of weird. You don't really see who's there. But like a year and a half later, 2 years later, we're like, oh my God, I attended all your lives. I was like, you did? Because I never saw you. They're like, oh my God, you're doing this. So I think I needed to hear that when I needed to hear it because my mind was like, I don't even know. I mean, I would do this anyway, but I'm wondering, is it making sense at all? And then there's also the thing that some people just kind of reach out to you out of the blue and be like, I've been watching you. People are just, they've just been watching you because people want to know, is this a fluke or are you serious about it? So doing something that's true to you also make it easy. And then also realizing that regardless of where you are, there are people that actually need whatever you have to say. Even if because it might be a step or two ahead of them, or maybe they just need validation. Like you had the lab for 8 hours, your experiment failed. Someone's like, me too, and you've made somebody's day, and that's more than anything. And they can start by, okay, let me go watch Dr. Mia and just see how else she's going to brighten my day. And from there, it kind of builds up to other things. I guess this lesson here is not to take anything for granted because it might be like, okay, it's just normal everyday stuff to me, but it could mean a whole lot for other people. And it's also very important to build your brand regardless. So if you start with something that's true to yourself, it's going to be easy. And then as you go, it can always evolve. There's nothing absolutely wrong with that. So you don't have to get it right the first time. Because as you're growing, maybe you started doing your experiment and it failed completely. You may have changed your thesis topic somewhere in the middle and then it becomes something different. But that's also okay. People kind of see that evolution and know there's nothing wrong with making certain pivots or changing stuff. So that's absolutely amazing. So let's talk about Scholarly Scouts and the work that you're doing with students through mentorship. Because you just mentioned earlier that you work with them one-on-one. That has to be a lot. So what was it that you saw or the gap that you needed to fill by providing students with mentorship and so on? Fundamentally, what made you create this and how are you working with these kids on such a level and still be able to be successful?
Yes. So I would say I saw a need, especially when it comes to applying for graduate school, that a lot of students feel lost. They don't really know where to start. It's things that they don't think to consider or don't really know what people are looking for in those spaces. I would say lucky, but it was a blessing that I was able to apply to those programs and do those things and get those interviews. But I had 2 acceptances to choose from. So it's very competitive. I think I applied to like maybe 10 to 12 schools. So you can do the math on how many said no. I saw that a lot of students were struggling and not feeling confident with how to go about that process. So what we decided to do, we said, okay, maybe what would be good is having cohorts and then we work with them one-on-one with their materials. So what we did was we came up with a program and we would pretty much help them understand, okay, how do you decide which place is ideal to apply to? We got to consider things like location, the faculty. Do they have the specialty that you're even looking for? Does the research align with the experience you already have? Also helping them create a CV that's going to be easy to read, but also gives impactful bullet points underneath that translates the value that you bring as a candidate. And then personal statements, we tell them that's your story right there. Your CV sets the tone. Your personal statement fills in the gaps of whatever you can't truly say in the CV. So I like to help guide them through that of knowing how to communicate those things. And of course, mock interviews, because there's nothing, I don't think I was really truly prepared for interviews. Like the ones I got invited for, I ended up getting, which was great, but it would have been nice to be able to practice that and think about the types of questions that could be asked. I think networking is very important. So teaching them how to network, because we're in a different time where a lot of that face-to-face connection and knowing how to get to know people and utilize those connections can get lost with everything being so quick. I like teaching them that it's okay to slow down and process and strategize and be calculated with your decisions. And then I also got invited to a lot of speaking engagements. So I was saying, you know what? This will be a great time to use Scholarly Scouts for speaking engagements. Not only have I been able to connect, reach people that are in higher education, but also the young babies going to do experiments with pre-K students. That was fun. Outreach. So I really enjoy doing things like that. And I just feel like it's a need for people to see that a scientist can look like me. And I would have, when I was young, I didn't know. I never saw a scientist, let alone one that looks like me. So I think right now, even more is empowering for people to see that it's not, science doesn't look like one broad thing. It's a whole spectrum of ways that science can look like. And sometimes it starts with just doing a fun activity with kids just to spark their curiosity. I think that's why I started Scholarly Scouts. I just want to be able to make a difference when it comes to this new generation of scholars, because people need guidance. And I wanted to create a safe space and a place where people feel like they're valued and that what they have to bring to the table matters. So that's what I would say regarding what we do and why I do things the way we do for the company.
This is so incredible, and I like the way you laid it out. But I also, more importantly, like when you talked about networking, because I think we've been talking about networking since the beginning of time, it feels like. However, today is actually one of the most difficult things for people to do, especially professionals, and especially women in STEM. And I guess for me, especially, I left corporate like 2 years ago, and I had to expand my network beyond like my industry. Very exciting because every day I'm discovering new things. And the last 2 years is almost like it's on steroids, because you just need to meet one person, and from the one person, I meet like 10 other people, because it just flows. I mean, once you're aligned. So when I have these conversations again, I'm like, oh my goodness, it is still a problem, because if you're building a business, like you're building Scholarly Scout or your other business, networking is not optional. It's
It's
a
not.
survival thing. But I guess if you're in corporate and you have a job and you go in there every day and get paid every 2 weeks or every month, networking doesn't seem like it's one of those that you're like, "Okay, if I can't get to it, I'll figure it out later." When you now realize that you needed to have network, is almost like too late. So I think even with going into grad school or trying to get a job, or even if you have a job, whatever it is, I feel like networking is one of those things that you just have to do regularly. I had an executive that I met sometime, and she basically said that how she handled it was that she made it part of her job. Like how you plan your day, have this meeting, talk to this person, whatever. Networking was there. So it was almost in her mind. She tricked her mind to think this is part of my job. If I don't do it, I'm going to be evaluated on whatever. Because if she thought of it as something to do outside of work, she would never, ever have done that. So if they can start that early to build that muscle, to network and realize that it's still all about relationships. That is like gold. So I'm glad that you're doing that, and thank you so much for all the work you do. What I'm thinking, how can you go through all this, have the resume and your personal statement and all of that, and even at the minimum, by the time you're done, you know yourself better and you're actually more confident and you can walk in and have a conversation because it did take some time to put that together. So that's actually absolutely incredible. I know you're doing this work, but even if you have all the help in the world, there's still like a whole world out there that needs something like what you're doing a little bit easier. For educators or other leaders to kind of prepare students to do this, because I feel like it's one of those things that the more you do, it seems like the more there is to do. When you meet people or when you go on all the speaking engagements and stuff like that, how do you encourage other people, the educators, to kind of do the same work so that at least everybody has a fighting chance?
So everybody has a fighting chance. Well, I would say it takes a team, you know? Everybody can't do everything alone. It takes a team of people to do this. And I always encourage that we all have our own purpose in this world. And I think it takes a lot of soul searching to really define what that is for you and doing things that really align with your goals, your values, who you are as a person. And I always tell people that it's okay to ask for help and it's okay to rely on a support system when you really need it. I know right now for me, I think what I think is really going to help is getting those funds like grants and partnerships, making connections that way. I think is good. It helps to take the load off because when you try to take on all of that by yourself, it can be a lot. So my goal right now is trying to get the contracts to be able to hire people that can help with things like the social media marketing and running the ads. But I also really like doing the consultations where I sit down and get to know people myself. I think it's all about finding that balance of what you think is going to help you. And sometimes you have to think about what's ideal. So when you do these things out of your own pocket, it can get pricey. For me, it's all about learning strategy and adjusting. In the beginning, it was not as difficult to foot some of those costs when you're starting out. But as things start growing and you start getting invited to more things and helping more students need to keep running ads, it gets costly. So finding a team and figuring out different strategies of how to raise capital, I say connect with people that's outside of your industry. You'll be surprised. I would connect with people that's in business, like they're not even in science or anything educational related. It's good to talk to people that's outside of your field because sometimes we can be in our own bubble and it takes branching out to kind of see where are people's heads in other spaces. And that I think is a leveraging point. So my advice is always be willing to be open minded and don't think that just because someone is not in your particular area or your space that they can't bring value to what you're trying to do. So out of all the things I said, that's the key takeaway.
Because I like what you said about when you're walking on something for so long, you're kind of in it, and sometimes you can't really see beyond what you're doing. And just having that outside perspective helps. There's something I heard on a podcast a couple of years ago, which is the CEO was saying that the solution that they found that actually made them extremely rich and whatever was from a totally different industry because he just likes to know what other people are doing. There's nothing new under the sun, but the different ways that you can implement the same thing. When you're now talking to somebody that's outside of your space, even just trying to explain what you're doing to them might bring you some clarity. And then if there are things that are difficult for them to understand, it will actually make you question, okay, maybe that's why XYZ is not working. But, collaboration is really key. There's a lot of work to be done. And I think there'll always be a lot of work to be done because we're, as human beings, we like to create problems for ourselves. So there's always going to be something to do. And I feel like, to your point, the more you're open and willing to kind of collaborate with other people, the easier it gets. So I'm pretty sure that you're doing that in your own circles, and everybody out there that has, a project that they're working on, if it seems overwhelming, it's probably because, like Dr. Mia said, you're trying to do it all by
Yeah.
yourself.
Oh goodness. I know NeuroPlex though has really taught me a lot
Yeah.
because this is an entirely different space. We're talking biotech space where I wouldn't say it's cutthroat, but you really have to have some tough skin to get into the game. It's going to be a lot of people that's going to say no starting out. But just because it's rejection doesn't mean it's over. Sometimes rejection is protection. You always just have to be willing to get back up and try it again and find another strategy or another angle to get the job done. Actively learning, I think it's been great. It's built some tenacity for me, but things are starting to pick up and I'm excited about the direction that's getting ready to take. So that's been a learning lesson for me.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask you about NeuroPlex later on. It's so funny. You know how your Instagram or LinkedIn and you see all these grants for biotech, deep tech, whatever. Every time I see them, I kind of freak out because yes, I'm an engineer, but I've always known that I didn't want to be technical forever. And right now I'm like, okay, well, apart from AI, but I focus on strategy when it comes to AI because that's like what I love, absolutely love doing. So when I see founders like you building a tech company, health tech, biotech, in my mind, I'm thinking, how? So tell us a bit more about NeuroPlex, what it
Sure.
does, and what inspired you to start this venture, and what's
Sure.
keeping you going.
Absolutely. I would say what really started for me is I got exposure to the biotech industry as a scholar. And I really started investigating, like, okay, what is it like in that space? Because at first I came in with the mindset that I want to actually be an employee in that space, which is fine. But as I learned more and saw these people who started their own companies that were successful, and I was like, okay, I'm really interested in drug discovery and how that works. So I started pretty much just going to different events, learning about the challenges. And I said, you know what? It started off as an idea, and I somehow on LinkedIn, y'all better get on there, random guy reached out and was like, hey, I have a coaching business for businesses, and this person was willing to mentor me for free, pretty much, because I'm a student. And that I really think it just changed my entire perspective because I knew I had this idea, but I didn't know where to start. So my idea or NeuroPlex is founded based on wanting to really focus on plant solutions. I did a lot of preclinical work with looking at diabetic and stroke animals and how that leads to dementia. And so I said, wow, because I told my advisor at the time during my PhD, hey, I really want to build my own company that focuses on this sector. It made it harder for me, but I appreciate her giving me that opportunity to learn how that works in that space. So I was able to work with a new drug that's going through the FDA now and testing it in our condition, which was great. And so with that, finding that mentor, that business mentor, I was in the middle of writing my dissertation and I just wanted something outside of just focusing on that. So I was mentoring with Scholarly Scouts, but also learning about the biotech space as a business from a business perspective. It first started off as, hey, just go to some pitch competitions and see how that works out. And I applied for a pitch competition and I won. And that was just so rewarding. And that gave me the confirmation to know, okay, yes, I was scared and I did not know what the outcome was going to be, but that gave me that confirmation that, okay, this is a good idea and I should really hone in now and make this happen. I knew I had the idea of wanting to come up with an extraction method to create high purity plant compounds and test them in dementia models. And then I learned that, okay, this is a patentable method. So I joined a accelerator program and was matched with a mentor who is an investor. And that really gave me so much perspective, like how to build a budget for an idea this big, I ended up narrowing down my protocol of how I want to execute this extraction method. What are the different options that I can take? Do I want to go with getting a VC? Do I want to get non-dilutive funds? And if so, how am I going to do this? What's going to be the priority way to do this? And what's going to be the backup plan to get this done? Thankfully, I'm in the process of getting ready to submit a proposal to National Science Foundation for some phase 1 grants. They approved my project pitch, which is great. So you have a preliminary point and they give feedback and say, okay, is this a risk we're willing to take? So at first they said, we need some more clarification. And I provided that, and I was able to pass through that stage, the risk phase. I'm excited about that. And so now really working on building connections and going to, it's just crazy that going to the university I went to for my PhD, they have a lot of, I did some science communications and learned about the Zucker Institute that they have there that helps companies, and they create partnerships with companies to help them patent technology. And so I said, that might just be my way in. So I'm actively working and getting this idea off the ground, but it took leaning and depending on mentors. So that's what I would say with the process that I've been doing, that making connections and stepping out in unknown territory and being willing to take risk and experience rejection, it'll pay off in the end because you're learning through the process. I know that was a mouthful, but
No, this is incredible because I've always wondered, like, how do you do? Because this is a huge project. I don't care how you want to look at it. In this field, drug discovery, whatever, biotech, it is a lot. There's so many moving parts. And for you to get to a point where you went through this National Science Foundation thing and they basically like vetted you and said, fine, you're okay, go ahead and apply to take our money. That is huge. Like big drug companies or health companies, and they seem like they just woke up one day and became that big. But it does take time to build up to that. So I'm really excited. I'm excited for you and for what you're building. And we'll hopefully follow your journey and we hope to learn more in the process. So let's talk about making science more accessible to everyone. Because again, somebody's listening to you right now talking about NeuroPlex and they're like, yeah, that's wonderful, but I'm still very confused. So if I wanted to do the same thing you did, for example, because again, for you to be able to, first of all, win the pitch, get into the accelerator, get your NSF, you had to find a way. I don't care if those people have been scientists for 30 or 35 years or investing in businesses, but you still had to break down whatever you're working on, however complex it is, into very, very simple ways that people can understand. Because there's this thing they say about do not burden the people, your clients, your investors, or whoever you're talking to with figuring out what you're saying. So you've done that successfully. And that is a leadership skill that most people don't really realize. So if someone says, okay, I'm a scientist, I have all this knowledge, but then there's something lost in translation when they're trying to explain to somebody else, how would you tell them to go through that? Because obviously you've been successful at doing that.
So I think the way I really refined that skill was doing that accelerator with people who aren't scientists. And the people I'm presenting to were not scientists at all. Like, this is pretty much lay audience. And that is a skill that is difficult when you've been in the zone of really thinking through nitty gritty scientific details. And sometimes that can just go over people's heads and they're like, what are you talking about? So I say the way to do that is think big picture wise especially depending on your audience now. If it's truly a lay audience, I think it's good to connect with people in a way where they can resonate with the experience. For example, I talked about how many people take supplements or know people in their family who take supplements that are plant based. And so people start raising their hands and all that good stuff. And I tell them, what if I tell you that there's a way that these supplements can be made more efficiently and at a higher quality? Also, with that specific audience, I brought up a picture of my grandmother who was recently diagnosed with dementia, and then my aunt who unfortunately passed away from having dementia. And I talked about how a lot of people in our community have these comorbid diseases that eventually can progress to this, but what can we do to change it? And so that's where I start talking about I have a new technology that I want to bring that can make these plant-based supplements be better and more efficient and that have medicinal quality. I think presenting it in that way is what's important, like, and then talking about what's the impact that this can have. We make medicinal products more affordable and accessible. We're helping provide more jobs to R&D focused jobs to whatever region we're in. I said Southeast region because that's where I am. Giving people more time with their families. We want to help extend life and give them more connection. Who knows, that could be 3 more birthdays that they can spend with their family members, 3 more holidays. I think talking about impact is huge when it comes to communicating the science. Also, really just talking about things that people can connect with. So many people have family members with dementia or heart disease or whatever the case may be. And that really, I think, sticks with people when you start there and then talk about what you want to do. So I think that's how I've learned to communicate, really think about my life experience, and I say have empathy in a way to kind of see what other people's experiences have been regarding whatever topic you're talking about. I think that's key to being able to communicate findings. Now, if you're talking to VCs and investors, they care about does it make sense financially. So it depends on your audience. So I know sometimes when to turn the emotion on and off some, but depending on what you're talking about, you definitely need to make sure you have your numbers tight when you start talking to people that want to actually truly invest some money into you, you know.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it's so interesting, but that's pretty much one of the hardest things you can ever do. And not because it's hard, but human beings are storytellers. People are like every day from the moment you wake up to when you go to bed, you're telling stories. But for some reason, when it comes to talking about our career or our work, we automatically overcomplicate things. And the first thing we say, I'm not a good storyteller, I'm not a good speaker, I can't really do this. I guess because there's a lot at stake in our minds. Because when we're trying to convince our parents to give us that extra money, it's like we feel like there's nothing at stake. But when you're trying to convince somebody to fund your business or give you a promotion or give you a job, I guess we focus less on the person and the thing and more on the outcome that we want. And if it doesn't work out that way, so it's almost like we take away from the ease of storytelling. Definitely, there are skills to storytelling, but I think fundamentally we are built that way. So if we kind of let go and kind of step into like who we really are, it makes it easy. One thing I heard on some podcast, someone was talking about Sam Altman and how he's really good at saying the right things to the right audience. It's like it's the exact same story,
Mm-hmm.
but when he talks to users like you and I, he says what he tells us what we want to hear. When he's talking to the regulators, he tells them what they want to hear. When he's talking to the investors, he tells them what they want to hear. When he's talking to the coders and developers and all the techies, he tells them what they want to hear. It's the exact same story told differently.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge, incredible skill. And I think it just takes you stepping back and be like, let's forget about the outcome. Let's just think about what am I trying to get. So thank you for sharing that. But that's really, really critical. It's something I'm continuously working on because it's a skill that I have to continuously develop. But you can't get better if you don't take the step and then get feedback. So thank you for sharing that. That's absolutely incredible and amazing. So let's talk about legacy because I always want to know because again we're here. You're building NeuroPlex. You're building scholarly scouts. You're working to be in higher education, helping the next generation of scientists figure things out. What are you looking to leave? What is your hope that when people are doing it, they're like, oh, because of Dr. Mia, I'm able to do this. So, what's your legacy?
I just want, at the end of the day, I really want people to walk away feeling like what they want to do is possible. It's so many different things going on in the world, and sometimes people just need that confirmation that it's not out of reach and people can do what they want, you know, what they desire.
So, let's talk legacy. You have NeuroPlex, you have scholarly scouts, you have your work in education, what you're doing with raising the next generation of STEM leaders. If someone were to say, I was able to do this because of Dr. Mia, what would you want that to be?
I would say that the legacy I want to be leave behind is that I was able to foster safe environments where people felt like they could grow and that they can see themselves knowing that they're never stuck in one place and that life is dynamic. It always changes and it's all about us adjusting to what's going on in our lives and also just to be in touch with themselves and learn more about what their purpose is. And I think if you don't know your purpose, it's hard to navigate through life and it takes a lot of intuition and soul searching to figure out what that is. And so I just want people to walk away knowing that you can always start over when you need to. You can always have time to reflect. And I always want people to know that it's important to think outside of yourself, but always be willing to pour back into yourself. Just because things don't work out at that time, it doesn't mean that it'll never work out. So the legacy I want to leave behind is that things don't have to be done as one specific way to get it done. There's hope, operate in love, always put your best foot forward and don't pretend to be someone you're not. Always be authentic. Often I tell the students I work with all the time that authenticity leads the way. As long as you're authentic and you're genuine, the right opportunities will come to you. So it's not about a opportunity, it's about the right opportunity that's fitted and aligns with your goals and the vision you have for your life.
That's wonderful. I'm excited. I want to say, Dr. Mia, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today, for sharing so much, for showing what it means to be a leader in this space and also not be afraid to try different things and show up authentically and serve and learn. Be mentored and taking all of that because, again, there's just a lot to learn from what you said about collaborating, about putting yourself out there, letting people know what you're doing, because some of the opportunities you got was because people knew what you were doing, understood your brand, what you're trying to build, and stepped up to partner with you to make that happen, be it mentorship or whatever else. So there's a lot of learning here, and I thank you so much for sharing that. So I want to ask you, what are you working on right now, and where can people find you and collaborate with you?
Sure. I'm really working on many different things. So I really Of course, I'm working to have a lab in the academic setting where I can help students get hands-on research experience while also testing out, regular plant-based solutions and helping them understand how to use those skills that are transferable wherever they choose to go. Right now, I definitely am open to collaborations for Scholarly Scouts just to be able to reach more students. I feel like now more than ever, students need that hope to know that, okay, yes, things are changing, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. You can still go to these types of programs and succeed and finish. I really want to make an impact on a grander scale. So I think university partnerships are very much so welcome. I'm very much so welcome to the partnering with nonprofits. I've done tutoring before too. I was a freelance tutor for a while. So building partnerships where we can bring in tutors to their organization to help the students or work with them in mentoring, applying for colleges, because we've helped students apply for colleges and get into very great schools, and we want to continue to do those things on a grander scale. And then, of course, for NeuroPlex, I am raising capital, and that is where I am for sure on that, and making the right connections to be able to do this efficiently. So I am absolutely welcoming university partnerships with that, especially to help develop this technology and get this patent pushed through so we can get it on the market. So all in all, I want to make connections in any way possible, whether that is, me helping someone or vice versa. If someone even just wants to learn about what the journey was like. And I like to connect with people through the STEM-Spired podcast. So that's how we met. And I really appreciate learning different perspectives and connecting with people. I think it's good to get out the mindset that people don't have to be at the top of the totem pole for you to connect with them. You have to be willing to connect with people, even if they're in training. You don't know where people are going in life. You have no clue. So I say always approach people with kindness, respect, and open-mindedness. Yeah. So that is where I am. I'm working on a good bit of things, but they're all unfolding in their own way.
Yeah, I know you're taking some time off, but Dr. Mia is on LinkedIn and you can reach out to her. And we're going to share all that information about NeuroPlex and Scholarly Scout. So if you're wanting to invest, or if you want to partner, or if you're someone that needs mentoring to get into college, you have all that information in the show notes. So thank you so much for joining us, and everyone listening. Please make sure you follow Dr. Mia and me, tag us, and share what was most helpful today. If there's anything that you learned that you're going to implement in your own life or business and take action on, just let us know. We're looking forward to hearing from you, really. And if you're not following our podcast, follow the podcast, leave us a review, and I will shout you out in our future episodes. So thank you again, Dr. Mia, for joining me. And
thank you.
Again, thank you everyone for listening, and make sure you join us on the next episode. Bye.